All right, well, we'll get started. So finding your way into your space, whatever feels right for you this morning. I invite you to start on your back if that works for you, but if you prefer something else, by all means, adjust accordingly. Coming into our own individual spaces, feeling into the surface underneath you, maybe taking a few moments to notice some things in your space. And also reminding ourselves of this collective space that we find ourselves in today. This opportunity to come together and share a yoga practice. Whether you're here with us on a Friday morning or whether you're watching along a little later, we're still joining in this collective practice together, and perhaps reminding ourselves that collective practice doesn't mean we all do the same movements at the same time. Rather just bringing our focus, our attention into kind of some form of shared experience. And as you're settling in, you might like to stretch the legs out long or bend the knees and keep the feet flat. I also invite you, if you would like to this morning, to experiment with a bit of legs up the wall. You might tuck the knees into the chest, and that might be enough this morning, that little bit of elevation of the feet. You might want to play with extending one or both feet up towards the ceiling, perhaps just finding a bit of softness in the knees, finding just a gentle openness in the soles of the feet. If you happen to have an actual wall nearby, you're very welcome to adjust yourself into a position where you can rest your legs on the wall. And if you're taking this position in space away from the wall and you feel like it's quite hard to keep your legs upright, it feels like a lot of effort, you might want to experiment with sliding your palms underneath your bottom on the floor and on your surface. And then taking the legs up, that little bit of a tilt of the pelvis can sometimes just create a little more ease there. And over these next couple of weeks, we're going to be experimenting, exploring this idea of physical awareness from the bottom up. And so for today's class, this first week of this 3-week series, we're going to be really bringing our attention to our body from the toes to the hip joint. So sort of our legs, our feet. So I invite you to just spend a few moments with your awareness there. Particularly if you have your legs elevated, it might feel a little different to normal. Can you feel any sensations there? If you have the feet down, perhaps really paying attention to those sensations of connection through the feet, the toes. You might like to find a little movement, even you might like to sway. You might like to tilt the feet forwards and backwards or find some gentle movement as part of that. Let's just take a few breaths here. And we find a sense of ease through the feet, the legs, all the way up to the hips. Perhaps just bringing to mind everything that our feet, our legs, and the joints that connect them have been doing for us already today. Let's take 2 more just gentle, aware breaths here. And then slowly, steadily, we can return our feet towards the floor. If they were lifted, you might like to hug them in towards the chest initially. As you touch down with the feet, can we just tune into the sensations here? I personally find after any time with the feet elevated like that, there's sort of a strange coolness that happens in my feet as I bring them back down. Perhaps it's similar for you. Perhaps you experience something different. Just noticing whatever is there for you. Then we're going to bring our little rolly object. So your can, your ball, your drink bottle, whatever you happen to have. Someone on Tuesday night had a foam roller. And if you've got something like that, just bringing it under one foot and rolling backwards and forwards a few times here. If you didn't have an object or it doesn't work for you rolling it in this way, you could even lift the foot, cross it over the other leg, and use the thumbs to massage through different feet. It's really just about bringing that external contact into the foot to see what those sensations feel like. If you're rolling, you may like to tilt your foot in or out, a little rolling on the inner or outer edge, perhaps through the arch. You might experiment with bringing that rolly object all the way up under the toes or all the way around the back of the heel. This is your exploration here. Just take a few moments to play around. Let's take one more smooth, steady breath. And then we can bring that foot that we were rolling down to the floor. You could have it planted flat or extended out long. And just take a moment to notice any subtle differences between the foot that you've been rolling and the foot that we haven't rolled yet. You feel any shifts in sensation. There might be big differences. You might not notice much at all. Just take a moment to tune in. And then we'll set that can or ball or whatever you've got under the other foot. Finding that similar movement here, forwards and backwards, connecting with different parts of the sole of the foot. You can move fast or slow, finding that rhythm that works for your body, for your mind, whatever you need in this practice this morning. And again, maybe taking slightly different changes to the leg. Maybe you tilt it in or out. Let's take a couple more rolls in your own time. And then gently releasing that object, popping it away to the side when you're ready. And again, let's tune in. Let's take a moment to pay attention. We can notice through the toes, the soles of the feet, the heels. We can bring a little mobility up through the different joints through each leg. So you might like to plant your left leg while we lift the right leg. Keeping the knee and the hip joint stable as we just rotate through the ankle in different directions. You might like to imagine you're drawing some circles with that big toe. They could be small or big. You might adjust the size of that circle as you go. When you feel ready, you might take those circles in the other direction. And then this time we're going to bring the ankle back to a comfortable midpoint. This time the ankle and the hip staying stable. We're going to move through the knees. The way I like to describe this movement is if there's a wall at the bottom of your mat or the bottom of your space, can you paint circles on that wall with the sole of your foot? We're taking the sole of the foot around. The knee stays stacked roughly over the hip, but it sort of opens out and bends a little more, and there's an inner and outer roll to the thigh. It can be a little awkward and a little tricky to get the hang of. And for most of the movement, it isn't super big. There's a limitation, particularly for a lot of us on that inward roll. So as the foot goes around the outside of the circle, the leg doesn't want to move in that far in that direction. We don't want to force it. We're just playing with the sensation, the mobility here. You can take those circles in the other direction if you haven't already. I'm trying to keep the foot somewhat relaxed. I find in this one, I often want to kind of tighten and cramp through the foot, but see if we can bring a bit of ease in the rest of the leg. And gently finding that midpoint for the foot within that circle. And then this time we keep the ankle and the knee stable, and let's see if we can take the hip joint around in some circles. It's like that L-shaped bend in the leg stays the same as we rotate the leg around in different directions. You might find you want to lengthen out the opposite leg so it's not in the way as you cycle through. Can we perhaps check in with the jaw, with the face, that we're not creating any additional tension there? We're changing that direction if and when you're ready. And coming back to the middle, and we can release that right foot to the floor. If you want to, in between sides, you could plant both feet and just weave the knees side to side, a little bit of a roll and release for the hips, the lower back, if you feel like you need it. And then we'll take that sequence through on the other side. So the right foot planting flat this time, the left leg lifting. Let's keep the hip and the knee joint stable as we find some movement through the ankle. It can sometimes be interesting to pay attention to how smooth that circle is. There might be parts of the circle where it feels a little harder to keep a smooth, steady movement, and that's okay. We don't need to judge that, but it's just interesting to notice what's happening within our bodies. We go back in the other way with that ankle movement. And then when you're ready, we can find that comfortable midpoint for the ankle, keeping the ankle and the hip stable this time. If and when you're ready, can we find those circles on that imaginary wall at the bottom of our space that lets us move through the knee joint in different directions. We feel that rotation in and out of the upper leg. If your brain's got the hang of that one and you want to send it back in the other direction, you can. And then finding the size of that circle, the speed of movement that works for you today. And then we can come back to the center of that circle with the foot, keeping the knee joint stable now as we find circular movements coming from the hip. And again, maybe you want to lengthen out that opposite leg to give you a bit more space. And as much as possible, seeing if we can make these movements without rocking too much side to side on our hips. Sometimes when we take this leg in big circles, we start actually rocking our hips side to side. We're seeing if we can keep the back of the hips anchored, really engaging and supporting through the rest of the body. And then when you're ready, we can head back in the other direction. Beautiful. We can come back to center, releasing that foot down. Again, taking any movements you need, whether that's a big stretch out long along your space, whether you want to hug the knees in or rock side to side. And then before we start to head up, we'll have one more option here on our backs. We can hug that right knee in towards the chest. If it's comfortable for you, letting the left leg come out long. And then from here, we can make our way across the body into a twist. So we can take this right knee in the left hand and let the right arm come out beside us. And then maybe you just want to hug that right knee a little way across the body, so towards the left shoulder. You can let this right hip roll, release away from the floor. That might feel like enough, or you can come any degree further as long as it feels good for your body. You could come all the way over across the body onto the floor with that right leg, just a little way across, or anywhere in between. You might even like to ease backwards and forwards a few times, crossing over the body and coming back. We can use this right arm that's out to the side as a bit of an anchor for us. Can we come back to our breath wherever we've ended up with this cross-body movement? Let's take one more full, steady breath here. And coming back to center, and bring that right knee down. And let's explore that with the left leg this time. So hugging the left knee in towards the chest, maybe the right leg stretches out long. When you're ready, we can find that cross-body connection. So the right hand's the one holding the left knee and the left hand can release away. And even this might be enough, a bit of a cross-body, right hand connecting to left knee. That might feel like enough. Or you can cross that knee over away any amount. Whether you come a little, whether you come all the way over, whatever feels right in your body, and then connect to breath wherever you've found that best place to be. Can we breathe some space, some ease into the body wherever we meet some sensations of tightness, of resistance. Let's take one more full breath here. And then we can slowly, steadily ease our way back. And then this time we'll make our way all the way over to one side, picking whichever side works best for you. And we'll gradually make our way up, finding hands and knees. As you're ready, if it's a plant that's underneath the shoulders, setting up with a long spine here. You may even like to ease into this position with a couple of cat and cows, just a little bit of tilting of the pelvis, a little bit of arching, lengthening through the spine. And then we'll find a little sideways movement with our legs. So let's start with the right leg, taking it back long, tucking the toes under. How much can we keep the rest of the body stable? Can we really engage into the hands, into the other leg, keeping ourselves steady and stable here? You can stay connected with those right toes, or you could lift them up. Either option is completely fine, finding that best version for you here. And then from this position, we're going to take that right foot out to the side. However far it works for you to go, you could touch down with the toes again at the side or keep it lifted. And then we're going to come back behind it. So we're just going to work with taking that foot out to the side any amount and drawing back around behind. How much can we push into the hands and keep stable through the rest of the body? So it's just the leg, the hip, making this side to side movement. And it doesn't have to be a big one, just taking that leg out to the side. It's a little bit of an unusual movement for the body. Can we use it to tune into where the body is strengthening and supporting us, perhaps in that stabilizing leg? Beautiful. The next time we step out to the side, let's experiment with leaving the foot there and perhaps squiggling it a little further around so that it's in line with the opposite knee. So we end up in ourselves in a half kneeling position with one leg kind of kicked out to the side in a bit of a kickstand position, with the foot flat and the toes pointing forward, if that works for you. If you need to change the angle slightly, go for it. Find what works for your hips. And then from here, we can walk ourselves up. So we can start to walk the hands back towards the knee and then slowly unfurl from here, coming upright. Hopefully we've got this left knee over the left hip, or underneath the left hip rather, and this right leg supportive out to the side. And then let's find some side bends. We can bring our right hand onto the right leg and the left hand up tall. And then just ease away and then come back upright again. Just taking a few times through that, lengthening through that left side of the body. Beautiful. It's up to you. Feel into whether you want to stay here, whether you want to keep in that side bend, or whether it works for you to keep coming in and out. And if you need to release that left arm at any time, you're very welcome to. We find a little space through the left side of the body. Beautiful. Let's take 2 more breaths, whether you're moving or still here. And we'll all gently come upright together. We can bring the hands down in front of us again and come back in with that right leg. Again, once we arrive back in all fours, maybe some cat and cows feel right for you, maybe some circles through the hips. Maybe you want to settle back in child's pose. Let's take about 2 breaths here, whatever you need. And then let's take the left leg back this time. We can tuck the toes under, feeling into the length at the back of the leg. This is a lovely place to stay. If you're looking for a little more, you might engage strongly through the hands to lift that leg any amount. It might be a tiny lift of the toes. You might bring it all the way up to hip height. However far you've lifted, just checking these lower ribs stay lifted away from the floor. We're really engaged and supported. And then we can experiment and play with that movement out to the side. A little bit of an extension out away from the body with that foot, whether you're stepping out and in, keeping the toes connected, or whether you're keeping it lifted, or any combination of that. Let's just explore a couple of times through. How does it feel as that leg heads out to the side? If there's a weirdness, a strangeness there, can we locate it in the body? What part feels a little different, a little strange? If it's painful, how can we adjust back to something a little more supportive? And then this time, let's see if we can keep that foot there. And once it's kind of landed, can we squiggle it around a little further so that it comes in line with the right knee? And then that gradual roll up to a kneeling position, taking our time to come up. Right hip stacked comfortably over the right knee. If you need to add extra padding under the knee, we can do that at any time. And then let's find those side bends, left hand connected with that left leg as we slide down any amount to reach and extend through the right hand side of the body. It can be helpful regardless of whether you're intending to stay in your side bend or not, to just spend a few breaths coming in and out. Really listening to those sensations in the body, working out how far you want to come to stay today. And then finding if you'd like to stay, you can. If you'd like to continue moving, you can. Either way, can we really focus on this reach through the right side, extending all the way from the knee, this connection down through the knee and the lower leg, really helping us lift and rise here. Smooth and steady with our breath. Can we connect into this left foot, really supporting us, perhaps feeling some engagement up through the inside of the leg. And then let's gently release upright and come down, setting down with the hands. Let's bring that knee in. And then up to you here again, whether you find a little movement or whether you want to come straight back to child's pose. We can set the knees a little wider with the big toes connecting. As we settle the hips back, maybe we reach the arms forwards. Maybe they're tucked under the head or around beside the hips. Can we feel the way the legs kind of fold over each other here, the way the hips, the knees, the ankles? We'll find a comfortable place to be. And if it feels too much for any of those joints, how can we add a cushion, a blanket, a little extra padding, either under the bottom, under the knees, perhaps tucking the toes if you need. There's lots of different small adjustments we can make to make sure it does feel good for the body. And taking a few breaths here. And then let's slowly, we can make our way back up to hands and knees, knees back in under the hips. And we can explore from here our first downward dog. So we can tuck the toes under, pressing strong into the hands, taking the hips high. As we arrive, perhaps pedaling out the feet, can we soften one knee while the opposite heel draws towards the floor? Not that it has to touch it by any stretch, but just finding that length in the back of one leg at a time. And when you feel like you've eased perhaps a little of that tightness out of the back of the legs, can we bring both legs together, softening the knees enough to find real length through the spine, pushing the floor away through the hands, both heels softening to the floor in equal amount. And whether the knees are bent a little or a lot, most of us will be able to find a strong stretch still down through the hamstrings, the calves, perhaps the soles of the feet too. Can you really tune in through the ball of the foot, through the pads of the toes? And then when you're ready, we can gently transition to standing, whether we walk the hands back towards the feet, whether you step the feet in a little, finding our way perhaps to a forward fold where the belly and the thighs are connecting. We've got some softness in the knees. Perhaps you look away through your legs behind you to let the crown of the head really soften towards the floor. And then we can slowly find our way up. So you might let the arms hang as you slowly uncurl, breathing smoothly and steadily. Or you might walk the hands up the body for a little more support. And we come upright and slowly uncurl our spine, finding length. And then let's make our way to the front of our space. So making sure you've got some room behind you, finding feet hip width apart as we check into our mountain pose. From here, let's tune in through the feet again. So can we feel perhaps the inner arches lifting ever so slightly without adding too much tension through the toes? Maybe we feel the kneecaps sort of zip in, lift up a little, the inner legs drawing up tall. You might find those movements, those subtle kind of adjustments in the lower body, bring a new kind of length through the tailbone. Maybe the front of the hips tilt forwards ever so slightly, or tilt upwards a little ever so slightly. Maybe that brings a little more engagement through the torso, allowing us to draw the crown of the head up tall. You might have the palms facing your body or facing out in front. Let's see if we can spend a few breaths here, really connecting strongly from the base up through the legs. Noticing any effects that has on the rest of the body. And then let's see if we can keep this same awareness of the lower body. As we inhale, lift the hands out and up, finding a gentle standing back bend. Palms facing forwards about shoulder width apart. Maybe we take the gaze up to the top of the wall in front. And as we sort of focus on, if we focus on our back bends, there's a tendency to lose that connection through the feet. So can instead we focus on a lift, a length through the front of the body, but that comes from the feet. That softness in the knees, but drawing up through the inner arches of the feet. A lift and engage up through the inner legs. Making sure you can breathe wherever you've ended up. There's a lot of subtle cues, and if it feels like a lot, just pay attention to one thing, one cue that kind of sits well and makes sense in your body. And then find your breath there. Let's see if we can take one more inhale here. With our exhale, we can come back upright, bending the knees more and folding forwards, belly to thighs, hands to maybe the floor, the legs, bring as much softness into those knees as you need. With the crown of the head down towards the floor, perhaps you might find a little sway side to side. If it feels too much for the balance, if you feel uncomfortable here, you could bring the gaze just in front of the feet for a little more visual support. And from here, let's step the right leg back. So the right leg stepping straight back from where it is, and then we can bring the knee down, finding ourselves in a low lunge. And if you want to add extra padding underneath the knees, you could here for sure. And then if it's comfortable for you, if it works for your balance, let's come up onto that thigh. And if you want to use a wall beside you, you definitely could. If you happen to have yoga blocks, they're great options, or a couple of cans or a couple of drink bottles. And then let's see if we can bring a bit of movement through this back leg. And so we'll start with the back hip over the back knee. So right hip over right knee. And then let's ease forwards from there as far as you need to go. It might only be 0.5 centimetre. You might feel like you can come forwards a fair way. And using this front foot, we're going to draw ourselves back over the hip. So I like to call this one a box lunge because this right leg's sort of at 90 degrees. And then we can ease forwards from there and then come back. Finding a rhythm with the breath that works for you today. And given we're really trying to focus in on the lower body, I don't want to give too many kind of cues or extras for the upper body, but if there's an arm movement that feels right, that feels good for you here and you want to add it in, by all means play with that, but see if we can keep the focus on what's happening in the lower body. After a few rounds, you might even want to swap what's happening with the back foot. You could tuck the toes if the foot was flat, or bring the foot flat if the toes were tucked, and see if that brings any changes to the sensation. See if it kind of changes the amount of mobility we have comfortably through this leg. And through this movement as much as possible, we're trying to stay away from our absolute end range because we want to be able to access our strength. Even at that furthest point, can we still push down through this front foot? Can we still feel engaged through the legs and then come back? When we go too far, there's this tendency of the hips to kind of fall open, the hips to let go. We don't want to go that far if we can help it. Let's go 2 more times through, just smooth and steady with your breath. And then we can meet with our hands down either side of that front foot, making our way to plank from here. So that front foot could come around to meet the back leg. Shifting the hips forwards a little perhaps so the shoulders are over the wrists, really pressing the floor away. Can we feel a lift through the chest? The shoulder blades gently reaching away from each other. Can we connect through the feet here? Whether you've got toes tucked or feet flat, can we press down a little, maybe feeling the reaction that has up through the front of the belly. Making sure we can breathe here. And then with your next exhale, we can come to the floor. So we can bend the elbows, come down through that push-up position, or we can walk the hands out a little and gently walk ourselves down, squiggling the hips so we're comfortable here. And then perhaps bringing the forehead down on some stacked hands and taking a few belly breaths towards the floor. Needing a little bit of lift, a little bit of space perhaps in the lower back. And then from here we have the option of coming into some movements for the hips. We'll go one side at a time, and you're welcome to come back to these belly breaths anytime you need. If a few rounds is enough, or if it doesn't work for you, you're welcome to come right back here. If you're wanting to give it a try, we slide the right knee straight out to the right with a right angle bend in the knee. So I'll show you what that looks like from a standing position. So lying on the floor, we can slide that right knee out. So we've sort of got a half frog leg position. And this might feel like enough. You might want to take a few breaths and let the front of that right hip just find a little more ease here. If that feels okay and you're after something else, we can add in a lift of that right foot and then lowering it back down to the floor. So the knees stay connected the whole time. The thigh rolls in a little to allow us to lift this right foot. Again, taking it as big or as small as you need. It's an unusual movement for the body for most of us. You might keep the head down towards the floor, or you might turn the head a little to the right as well. Let's take 2 more if this movement is feeling good for you today. And then let's release that right leg down beside the body. Maybe you want to bend both knees and sway the feet a little side to side, bringing a bit of rocking, a bit of side to side movement. If you'd like to come over to the other side, we can lengthen out the legs again and then bend that left knee, sliding it away straight out from the left hip. And again, maybe adding in that foot lift. You could tilt your gaze a little to the left. Keep it square to the mat. And again, if the sensation is feeling strange, can you locate the source of that strangeness with some curiosity, some playfulness? What does it feel like if we make the movement smaller? Does it feel as strange? Let's take just 2 more if you're still comfortable with this movement. And then bringing that foot back down, let's slide the legs long. Again, maybe a couple of breaths deep into the belly here, or bending both knees and swaying the feet with the breath. And then we'll gradually make our way to downward facing dog. Bring the hands under the shoulders for support. And remembering downward dog has lots of different versions that work just as well. So you can come into hands and knees, you can come into child's pose. You could tuck the toes and take the hips high, letting the heels find their length, even with that bend in the knees. Pressing the chest back towards the thighs with strong engaged arms here. And from whichever version you're taking, let's take a couple of breaths here. And we'll step forwards with the right leg towards our low lunge. If you'd like to take that with a sweep and lift of that leg up high into 3-legged dog first as you step through, you're very welcome to. From any of those other positions, with the left knee down, we can step the right foot forwards and squiggle it around towards in between the hands. And then can we bring ourselves up onto the thigh? Again, you can use extra supports here if we need. Finding ourselves upright in our low lunge with the right leg forwards. And then let's find that little bit of movement, focusing in this time on the left leg. So we'll start with our left hip over the left knee, and then we'll just ease forwards however far you need to go to feel some different sensations. Can we engage strength there? Can we push through this front leg to bring us gently back? Having a play, having an explore here, remembering those options if you need extra support under the knee. If you want to tuck the toes or take a different option with the back foot just to see what that does to the sensation. Beautiful. You can add in arm options anytime you like, but seeing if we can keep the focus firmly on the lower body here. Beautiful. Let's get 2 more, just smooth and steady with your breath. Lovely. Let's make our way to our forward fold, touching down with the hands again. We can lift that back knee, take some big steps or some little steps. Can we find that place where there's a comfortable bend in the knees, supporting the belly, supporting the chest? Do you want to keep connected with your hands to the legs, to the feet? Do you maybe want to hold opposite elbows and find a swaying fluid movement here? And then from here, we can make our way slowly up to stand, perhaps with a softness in the knees and that steady uncurling. Again, whether the arms hang heavy or walk up the body, we'll slowly uncurl the spine, taking your time. As we arrive back up, perhaps a roll of the shoulders here, finding some space across the chest, some length through the spine. Can we connect in through the feet, through the lower legs, the upper legs, all the way up to the hip joint. Connected and stable through our feet here. And then when you're ready, you might squeeze and stretch your fingers. You might grab yourself a drink. And we'll come into a little standing series here. From the front of our space, we can take a comfortable step back with the right leg. Finding our way into a high lunge here with a bend in the front knee, so it sits roughly over the ankle, and a bend in the back knee too. Can we find some space in the front of that right hip? That's a bit of stretch and length there. And then from here, if you feel like you've got the stability, and this is a great one to come either alongside a wall or even in front of a wall, you can have the wall under the support of the hands here to bring a bit of movement through that back ankle. So can we feel the way that supporting ankle, that right ankle, can bend and lengthen a little more? We want to feel strong and stable and supported the whole way through. So if you can move to kind of that movement in one end, but it feels a little unstable, how can you make that movement smaller? Make sure it's supported the whole way through. If you feel like your ankle can, again, maintain that stability, maybe you want to rock left and right a little on that back ankle. As long as you feel like you can, again, maintain that stability there. And then let's see if we can keep that center point here for the ankle. Can we find that middle engage point here? And then we'll find our warrior one. So let's bring that back foot flat on an angle that works for your hips so that we can stay roughly facing over this front leg. And so that might mean stepping that back foot a little out to the side. And then from here, we can have a go at our humble warrior, perhaps bringing both hands to the lower back, or you could interlace the fingers and reach the knuckles away, finding space across the front of the chest. We can take an inhale here. And with our exhale, tilting forwards with a long spine, using that front leg strength to support us. The more we drive into that front leg, the more perhaps we feel that engagement up through the belly, the chest. You could stay up high on an angle. If you're looking to come a little further, can you tuck the belly and the chest just inside that front leg? Wherever you've ended up, can you maintain that smooth, steady breath, that strength and connection through the legs? Taking one more breath wherever you are here. Beautiful. Let's release the hands as we come upright. We can hop this back leg in a little to bring most of our weight into this front knee here. And then we'll have a bit of a go at launching into our warrior three. So you could keep both hands on your hips. We bend into this back knee a little more and then drive it straight to launch all of our weight into this front leg. And you might find as you do this, you want to keep those back toes connected for a little balance. You might find you want to lift them off the floor a little. You might find you want to lift them off a lot and tilt the body forwards, coming more parallel with the floor. There's no right or wrong here. But can we feel the way this back leg can really launch us and push us, and the way the front leg stabilizes? It stops that momentum from taking us all the way forwards. And then perhaps on our next one, can we stay there for a breath or two, finding a little balance, however far you've come in that direction. Whether the toes are touching, lifted a little or lifted a lot. And then from here, can we bend into this standing leg a little and tuck the back knee in just behind the front knee. So it's a little tap of the back knee behind the front knee and then extending out again. It's a little bit of an awkward movement. We want it to feel like we've got that strength and support of the front leg. If you need to touch the toes down and step it in behind instead, you definitely could. Let's just take one more. And then we can step that back foot back up to meet the front. Perhaps with a pedal of the legs that sway side to side. You might step the legs out wide and take a standing spin here. And then we can take that over to the other side this time. So from the front of our space, can we find our way back with the left leg? Finding our way to our high lunge, we've got the front knee over the ankle, some softness in the back knee. As we find that movement through the ankle here, can we just gently bring ourselves forwards and backwards, bringing that movement from that back foot. It's the strength of the toes, the foot, the ankle, the lower leg that's creating this forwards and backwards. Making sure we can access our strength, our stability the whole way through if we need to, or if we'd like to explore a little bit of side to side movement with that back foot, that back ankle, we can. And then let's find the middle point for that ankle. Where are we most stable and strong here? Just pausing there for a moment. And then let's find our warrior one, stepping that back foot flat. Again, can we stay facing this front knee? Maybe we need to take that foot a little way out to the side. And when you're ready, let's find that humble warrior. We can bring hands to the lower back, elbows squeezing towards each other or interlace, reaching knuckles long. From the crown of the head long, can we start to tilt forwards any amount, really feeling how the weight transfers into that front foot. As we push back through that front foot, we can feel a little more supported and engaged, hopefully. If you're coming down inside the leg, tucking the chest, the belly away to the left a little here. Smooth and steady. Taking one last inhale where you are. And then our exhale, driving into that front foot, bringing ourselves upright, releasing hands. Maybe a roll or a shrug here. Maybe you want to step that back leg in a little to start to work towards this launch here. Can we bend into the back knee a little more and then drive it to bring our weight into the front leg? Just being mindful we're not locking the front knee out. See if we can keep a slight bend in that leg the whole way through. Remembering we can keep those toes touching the whole way through. We can launch a little, staying on that upright angle, or we can start to lift the heel. And so making sure you can keep a smooth breathing rhythm throughout, particularly if you're taking more of a tilt. Most likely you're going to take a little longer to find that movement each time, and you might need to take more than one breath for the movement. But can we breathe smoothly and steadily throughout? And then this next one, can we see if we can find a little stability, a little balance there, whether the toes are connected or lifted. And then when you're ready, can we bend more into the standing leg and tuck that back knee in behind it? Just a gentle connection there, and then reaching out long again. A little optional extra just to find a bit of challenge for the balance. A bit of internal rotation for this back leg. And lots of stability and strength for that front leg. Let's take one more here. Stepping back and bringing that back leg up. We find a little pedal, perhaps standing the feet wide for a standing spin. Beautiful. Let's take one more standing option before we all meet down back closer to the floor again. We can step our feet out wide here, turning the feet out at a bit of an angle. And as we bend into the knees, can we check the angle of the knees matches up with the angle of the feet? And let's take a few in and out of our goddess squat. Each time we come down, it's as if we're sliding the back of the pelvis, the lower back down a vertical wall, trying to keep the spine long, tall here with its natural curve. So we can inhale, sweep the arms out and up as we drive the legs tall. Exhale, coming down that imaginary wall, coming down with the hands and down with the hips all together. Inhale, reaching, driving up tall. Exhale, coming down into our goddess squat. Let's take a couple more, just feeling into the depth of that movement for you today. Can we really access that strength in the legs? Beautiful. Let's come down into our goddess squat and pause here for a few breaths. Can we really connect through the heels, through the balls of the feet? As you push down, can you feel the way the body responds, perhaps round through the inner thighs or the outer glutes? You could stay right here, or you could experiment with lifting one heel up, any amount. Just see if we can come up a little onto the ball of the foot and then relax back down. Connecting through that heel now, we can lift the other side, perhaps a little or a lot. It might feel strange to the hips. You might find you want to come up a bit higher in your goddess squat to explore that. If it's not for you today, you could come back to that flowing version. You could take a few breaths just in a still goddess squat. You may even like to, if that side to side heel is feeling pretty good and you like a little more, we can lift both heels and let them soften down. Let's take two more breaths, whatever version of this movement is working for you. As we anchor back down with the heels, perhaps let's sway a little side to side, lengthening at one side and then the other. Particularly if you could feel it through those inner thighs with those heel lifts, this might be a nice option. You could keep the hands at the heart, you could bring them to the hips. And then slowly let's come to center and bring ourselves upright, walking the feet back in. Let's all make our way down towards the floor again. You might like to come to the back of your space and take a slow, gradual release, softening the knees and curling the spine in that reverse movement to our roll up that we were doing before, or coming down in any other supportive way that works for you. We can walk the hands out and set the feet down. Coming around to a sitting position. And let's explore butterfly pose here. You could definitely do this one reclining if it's time for you to head down towards the floor. If you're ready to be on your back, bringing the soles of the feet together, bringing the knees out wide. You could use a gentle grip on the toes or the feet if you're upright to draw a little height through the spine. Can we feel that natural length from the tailbone all the way up to the crown of the head? And can we feel a little activation here around the outer hips? Almost as if we're pressing the feet towards each other and trying to engage the thigh bones out away from the hips. If that feels like too much activation and you want to soften into this shape, you definitely could. If you're upright, let's bring our hands out of the way. We can sit them around just behind the hips. And we can, from here, you could stay here for sure with your breath. Or if you'd like a little movement, we can bring our left knee all the way up and over towards the right, as if we're closing a book. Taking that to one side. In your own time, gently finding that open up again. Coming back over to the other side. Just taking a few times in your own breath to either settle into stillness here or to find this side to side movement. Let's take more. Opening out again. And then from here, I invite you to come down onto one side, just finding that side that fits best in your space. As we come down, we can perhaps bring some support under the head. You might curl up that lower arm underneath your head or bring in a pillow or a rolled up jumper. We can squiggle the hips a little, perhaps so the bottom hip is snugly underneath the top hip. We have the option here to bring a little strength, a little movement to the hips. And so with the legs stacked on top of each other, from here, we could bring that top hand either to the hip, just for a bit of external feedback to maybe check in that the hips do stay stacked. Or if you need a little more balance support, we can bring the fingertips down in front of the body or the hand down in front of the body. From here, let's lift that whole leg, the whole top leg as one unit. So the knee bend stays the same. We just lift it any amount and bring it back down. Just taking a few rounds as fast or as slow as you need, connecting in with your breath. As we lift and lower that knee, can we check in that the hips stay stacked? There's not sort of a rolling forwards or rolling back. You might stay with this version of the movement, or the next time you lift, you might explore what it feels like to lengthen that leg out in any direction. You could bring it forwards, it could be straight down below you, it could be a little behind you, and then bend it back in before lowering down. So we can either lift and lower, or we can lift, extend, bend, and then lower. And again, if you're extending, that leg doesn't have to come all the way straight. You might play with just a little extension, whatever feels right in your body this morning. And we link movement and breath together here. Let's take one more round through. And then from here, if it's comfortable for you, let's find a quad stretch. We can draw this top heel in towards the bottom, maybe finding a hold on the foot, the ankle here. As we draw the heel in towards the glutes, can we extend our knee down towards the bottom of our mat, our space? And have the freedom here to play around with it. Change the ankle of the knee, see how that feels for you. So if you can find the loveliest, most supportive version of this shape for you today. Let's take 2 more breaths here, breathing space into any sense of stretch or tightness here. And then let's release that foot and see if we can bring that leg down in front of the other leg onto the floor in front of us, the surface in front of us. And then from here, as far as you'd like to go, we can extend that top arm over away behind. So we've gradually drawn ourselves into a twist. We want it to feel lovely and supportive. So if that means tucking that top hand in behind the head and leading with the elbow, you could. If you need to shuffle kind of where your hips and your legs sit, adding some support underneath that top knee, you could. But can we feel here a real anchoring from the hip, from the leg, that lets us draw open into a bit of a twist here, perhaps the gaze, the chest gently spiraling towards the ceiling. Again, can we use our breath here, drawing some space? Perhaps one last breath here. And then gently unraveling, bringing the upper body back to center. Then bringing that top hip back on top. You might like to bring a fist to sort of pummel massage that top hip once it's stacked if that feels good for you. And then we'll make our way over to the other side. So you might just simply roll over in your space. You might want to flip around to the other direction, whatever works best for you. Making our way gently so that the other hip can be on top this time. Again, can we find support for our head and our neck here through the bottom arm or through an extra support of some kind? Bending both knees. Once we feel the hips stacked and centered, once we feel that solid support, the underside of the body, maybe we explore with lifting that top leg as one whole unit from the hip. You might have a few rounds of simply that lift and lower any amount. And at some stage, you may feel ready to add in that lengthening through the leg. We can lift, we can extend any amount for bending back in and lowering. Taking your time to work through that movement. Can you feel that supportive strength of the underside of the body? Beautiful. Let's take 2 or 3 more rounds connecting in with the breath. And then coming in one last time in your own time. Taking a moment to let that top leg soften and relax. And then when you feel ready, we can perhaps find that quad stretch, a hold of the foot or the ankle of that top leg. Can we bring length to the front of that top leg, to the front of the hip joint there, as we maybe draw the knee down towards the space, but play around. Does it feel good to tilt it in or out, to change it up or down, forwards or backwards? Trusting the sensations in the body to give us good feedback about where a comfortable place to stay is. Wherever you're comfortable, let's stay for 2 more breaths. When you're ready, we can release our grip on that leg, bringing that leg around in front of the body and onto the floor. Again, if you found last time it was helpful to add in some support, you can do that, or you can add it in later when you need. With that firm anchor of the legs connecting, can we find a little openness, find a little turn and reach, maybe with that top elbow, maybe with the top hand, and add that supporting hand under the head. Just find that best version of this twist. Feeling into the ways that our lower body really anchors us here and allows us to gradually ease into our twist to whatever degree is helpful today. And that smooth, steady breath. Perhaps taking one last breath here. And then we can unravel with the upper body. Maybe a pummel, a massage, a connection between that top hand and the hip if that's helpful. And then finding our way into a comfortable place. Wherever you'd like to be for relaxation today, you may choose to stay on your side here, adding in any supports that you need. You could make your way onto your back. It may feel really lovely to reconnect with that idea of legs at the wall, whether you take the legs up high with or without the hands underneath the hips, or find yourself a solid wall to bring your legs up. I know a few of you have bolsters at home. It's really lovely to bring a bolster underneath the hips for legs at the wall, or it can be really lovely. Works well for lots of people. Just making your way into where you would like to be. And often in our time of stillness, our relaxation time, we use the crown of the head, the breath, the heart, or the spine as kind of our access point, a connection point in with our physical sensations. Today, for this time, I invite you to connect in to the soles of your feet, whether they're connected to the floor or not, whether they're raised up in the air or lowered to your supportive surface. I invite you to perhaps imagine or visualize that each breath is absorbing in through the soles of the feet. Much like roots grounding themselves in rich, nourishing earth, can each breath help nourish and support us from this physical base, this point of the body that does so much connecting to the earth throughout our day. And I invite you to spend as much time here as you have today. Anytime our attention is naturally drawn elsewhere, perhaps we can just notice that thought, that feeling, acknowledge it. Bringing our awareness back to the openness, the softness, the connection to the soles of our feet. We gently spend some time here. And I will lovingly, gently leave you here for today. Thank you for connecting to yourself, to one another, to this shared time. My heart to yours. I wish you a really beautiful day. Thank you.